Man, oh man, oh man, y'all's girl Amanda Seales had a debate against 20 conservatives on the Jubilee platform. And we need to talk about that. And much deeper, we need to talk about what's all going on there, even deeper than what she said in this debate. I'm your host, Cool Colas, and you are now tuning into a new video on my channel. So let's get into it. Before I really get into this topic, I just want to say a few things. The first thing being that this video is not going to be what you probably expect it to be. As you probably have been seeing all over the internet, people have been talking rather positively about Amanda Seales and this debate, specifically on her standing on business. But I'm taking this video in a different direction because I want to talk about something that I believe a lot of people aren't really talking about for real like that. And I want to be clear, despite the things that I have said about Amanda Seales in the past, because I did a video on a shea butter samba case study on her. And despite everything that I still think about her, I have to acknowledge one thing, and that's I watched the whole video and I saw that she definitely stood on business as everybody else said. She stood on business about reparations for the most part. She stood on business about systemic racism. She stood on business about media control, and ultimately, and most important, the thing that I don't really see very often, she stood on business about delineation, and I cannot take that away from her. But here's the thing about that. We cannot sit around here and act brand new. All the talking points that Amanda Seales said in this Jubilee video are things that a lot of us pro-blacks in the grassroots and new black media have said time and time again. These are talking points that you've heard from Tariq Nasheed, Jason Black, Professor Black Truth, Marcel Dixon, and many more of us who have all said these same things or said these things to an even greater degree. My point in saying all that is she is getting championed online for saying things that we have all been saying for years. And the same shea butter sambas, because it's mostly them who are going around championing her like she is the biggest hero ever and she just really stood on business in a way nobody has ever done before, have gone around and called people like those who I just named hoteps. New black media has gotten demonized for saying the things that she was saying. We've been called, again, hoteps. We've been called divisive. Some of us have been called misogynists. Some of us have been called black supremacists. There's all types of stuff that, have been said about us. Now, I'm not saying shea butter sambas were calling us black supremacists, but, if you look at, more of the right-wing Sambo side, they've been kind of getting into that type of trolling babble. But my point in saying all this is that there have been nothing but negative comments that have been made about us when we've said these things. That's because there's a shea butter samba movement going on where only a black woman can say those things because, the Obamas and everybody have made it a thing where black women are leading the charge on empowerment and justice for the black community. That's somehow some type of social thing that's been going on. But again, my point in saying all this is that we have been saying these things for years and years on end. And here Amanda Seales goes and says the exact same things or a different version of the same things. It's in the same ballpark. And she's hailed as a justice hero. And one of the conversations that a lot of these shea butter sambas are having is, why y'all not like Amanda Seales? Is it because she loud? Is it because she's direct? There's a lot of that shit going on. But I want to be clear because I have multiple problems with Amanda Seales. And I want to touch on each and every one of them on an individual basis. My first problem with Amanda Seales is that Amanda Seales has a tendency to plebiscite babble. In the past is what we're talking about here. One of the things that she made, one of the comments is that, a lot of black people are too busy buying Jordans to really do anything that's progressive or do anything, that is justice oriented for blacks. And, she's used this example and it sounded very tone deaf and, it gets into respectability politics and things that really are irrelevant. Another problem that I had is that in 2019, Amanda Seales accused Myron Rolle, who was a former NFL football player and a neurosurgeon of sexual harassment, but then later, after it had already turned into a big deal, said that she was clarifying and saying that there were a bunch of women who made these claims, and she was more so referring to them, but it had already been stirred up because of the way that she had stated everything that she said. And some of you all are probably listening to this now and you're probably wondering, well, what's so wrong with that? But the issue is that she didn't really have full confirmation that these things were true before, she put them out there. And the other problem with that is once you start putting these things out into the air when it comes to a black man, whether it's true, whether it isn't true, or whether you're not sure, it's already a smear campaign, and you're already going to destroy his credibility and reputation again, even if it's not true. She's also dismissed a lot of our voices as too extreme, and she's also positioned herself as above the community in a way. One of the things she also did too was purposefully misread and misunderstand some of the things that were being said in new black media when it came to delineation in the first place. Now, I'm making all those comments to basically say it's clear that Amanda Seales also does not play well with others. This is the same problem that I said a few days ago when it came to Dr. Umar. Dr. Umar is a brilliant man. He has a lot of great knowledge when it comes to pro-blackness and black society, and he knows how to speak it to audiences where they're able to hear him, understand him, and get his message across. However, Dr. Umar does not work well in unity with people. He's always beefing with people. I mean, he literally has a beef with any type of pro-black person you can think of outside of probably Rizza Islam at this point. But with that being said, Amanda Seales also suffers from that issue of having this ego to the point where she's not working very well with others. And that's really not just with justice, pro-blackness, and all this other stuff. That's with literally everything. My point in saying all this is that I don't really have a problem with her tone or directness or any of this other stuff. But I can tell that there is an unwillingness to work with other people who are like-minded. And I'm also saying too that I can tell that there's a personality clash when it comes to Amanda Seales and some of the people who she deals with. And that leads me into some of the problems and things that I've seen when it comes to what's really going on here. What I think is taking place, family, is a rebrand. And I was just having a conversation with one of my followers on Threads about this recently, and she said what I was thinking perfectly. She said, I know a rebrand when I see one, or I know when I smell a rebrand. She said it to some extent like that. And my point in saying that is I believe that there's a rebrand and some type of shift that's going on as well too with Amanda Seales. Now, I have some theories on what potentially happened and why the rebrand is happening, but we also need to break down this concept of the rebrand itself as well too. Now, my theory on why I believe it's happening is I believe that she's ousted herself in spaces that she's been in before. Because although in that Jubilee video, she's claiming that she is not democratic, she's not a Democrat, she's not a liberal, she's just a radical and whatnot, I don't believe that that was always the case. And I also believe that she had this desire to maybe have some type of notoriety in Hollywood or as an actress. But she ousted herself and isolated herself in those situations because she couldn't get along well with people. That's why I said that I think that she doesn't play well with people, not just in justice, but also in unity. Now, she says that it's neurodivergence, and that's one of the reasons why she has issues with working with people and whatnot. But I think the point I'm trying to make here is that I think that whatever the case is, whether it's true, whether it's not, whatever it is, she is rebranding because she has ousted herself from the relationships that she had and probably destroyed them to a certain extent because of her behavior or the way that they perceive her behavior. This is even why we see things such as her having her beef with Issa Rae and all these other things that were going on that she's talking about. One thing that I had to think about when it came to this rebrand was that when it came to acting roles, they slowed up for her. When it came to the Democratic Party, those shield lanes didn't really have a spotlight for her anymore. And all of a sudden, this radical lane that she was creating became her new pivot. This rebrand, to a certain extent, reminds me of two things. I'm going to give y'all two examples of where I've seen something that's somewhat similar. The first example is with Iyanla Vanzandt. Now, a lot of people love Iyanla because she has this pop therapy platform. And I call it pop therapy because she's not a real licensed therapist. She just has the aesthetic of a therapist, and she says certain things that sound good to people. She operates in the art of being posturing. And as a result, a lot of people, especially the Shea Butter Sanders, just bought into it like she's everybody's mother therapist or whatever. But the point I'm trying to make about Iyanla Vanzandt was this was a woman who literally heckled Shahrazad Ali for saying a lot of the same points that Iyanla is saying today. I mean, she literally made it a point to disagree with her on stage and try to embarrass her and try to outshine her when she was saying, the points that she was saying around, relationships between men and women, specifically when it came to criticism of black women. And then Iyanla Vanzandt later, when she had her pop therapy platform, started echoing the same talking points years and years later. And this was actually called out down the line. Matter of fact, Shahrazad Ali even said something about it in an interview. Also think about Candace Owens. Candace Owens tried to have her little fake pro-black face turn as well too. And I talked about this in another video. Candace Owens has been known for being a very hostile, disrespectful, tethered mammy who has gone on and on to disrespect foundational black American culture. And a lot of people are going to say that it was under the guise of accountability and all sort of stuff. That's a bunch of bullshit. Candace Owens was being a black talking piece for white conservative racists who had a lot of smoke for black people, but they wanted to say these things and not sound racist, so they did it through her mammy and ass. So that's why I said that Candace Owens was trying to break away from that, because when she had that issue where she started talking cash shit about the Jews and all this other stuff, and she had that little beef with Ben Shapiro's people and all this other stuff, and she tried to go out on her own. I saw that she even tried to go on the Breakfast Club, and then they kind of low-key exposed her ass when she was trying to act like she was now starting to get more down with the black community, and she couldn't even answer the question, what do you say when someone says God is good to you? She was talking about God is good, amen. God is good all the time, and all the time God is good. That's something that we know as foundational black Americans, whether you're religious or whether you're not. Let's be clear. Justifying racism in bad faith is not accountability. You're literally trying to get a buck as a Republican shield. And because that wasn't working out for you, you decided to do something different. And you damn sure don't get the right to actually speak on our culture in the way that you did, because of the fact that you're not even a part of the fucking culture in the first place. But my point in saying all this is to say that that wasn't working for her anymore, because when the white supremacist is done with their tools, they break them. So she had to pivot, and she had to move, and she had to shift. So what I'm seeing from Amanda Seales is the same thing that I have seen in a way from Iyanla Vanzandt and also from Candace Owens. But I think that we need to have a deeper conversation about rebrands itself and why all this is important to talk about and to discuss. The point about rebrands is that it can be genuine or it can be fraudulent. But when someone was so firmly against us before, it's fair for us in the black grassroots, those of us who are pro-black, to question the motives. So the fraudulent side to rebranding is trying to create a grift, doing things because you know that there's some type of money in it for you. It's not genuine because it's something that only helps you and you alone. It doesn't necessarily help the community. And a lot of times you have these so-called thought leaders who will say things and do things because they know that it's going to earn them a check at the end of the day, and they don't have any plans to produce anything constructive, whether it's a school, whether it's a museum, whether it's even a book or some type of text that teaches people something that's tangible in justice or in life in general. The point I'm making is that these types of individuals only do certain things because they want to be able to fill their own pockets. So when they're rebranding, it's not out of them being genuine. It's because they know that it's a hustle that they can create an aesthetic off of, and they can earn a lot of money from it. That's why I said that this is the way that a fraudulent example of this would look. I do think in some cases rebranding can be understandable to a certain extent. Or at least I'll say I can empathize with it and understand why somebody feels the way that they do. I know that some people rebrand because they may start off on this big wave of pro-blackness or talking about black empowerment, and then they find out that they kind of took on a little bit too much. You know, they had a lot of ambitions for where they saw their movement and what they were doing going, and then they basically abandon it, and then they give up on it. And there's some people who want to pursue other things, and they know that if they continue to talk on this pro-black wave and talk the stuff that they're saying, that it's going to lead to, you know, a lot of negatives. There's going to be opportunities they're not going to be able to reap the benefits of. So a lot of times for them, that selfish side does kick in, and they're like, okay, what can I do for me that's not going to ruin my opportunities or allow me to talk about other pieces of my life and things like that. Like, for example, and I'm not saying this to denigrate or anything like that or disrespect her, because I do have a level of respect for her still. But Goddess Neef Knight is a good example of this. I know she had a pro-black channel or a Pan-Africanist channel that she was doing for a while, and it was getting pretty big, but she had a few lives where she was talking about how she wanted to explore other parts of her life, and there were certain things that, you know, that she wanted to share that were about her that may even conflict with the whole Pan-Africanism thing. So she wanted to be able to do those things, and then also she was afraid that if she did shift, that the people who supported her wouldn't support her anymore because they would think that she was fake and all this other stuff. And so she kind of went into that whole thing, and now I think she does a lot of lifestyle blogging and stuff like that. Again, I'm not trying to disrespect her or put her on blast, but I'm using that as an example to show you what I mean. That's probably why you don't really see a lot of videos from her, because she decided to rebrand, and most likely it was because she weighed out all these factors. If I keep going down this path, going down, you know, this road, eventually I'm gonna not be able to share other things about me, or at least that was her mindset when it came to this whole thing. A lot of people don't realize, though, is that you can still talk about pro-blackness and things that are important, because ultimately this is all about integrity. You should do these things because it's the right thing to do. But you can also show parts of yourself as well too. I mean, if you go on Threads, there's tons of things that I say about myself outside of me talking about pro-blackness, black issues, and things like that. Now, I incorporate all those things because that's a part of me, and those are things that I believe. But I talk about a lot of this other stuff as well too. I talk about video games. I talk about different restaurants I try out because I like to try a lot of different foods. I talk about writing and being an author. I talk about, like, you know, things that are going on in my area and my city and stuff like that. I talk about, like, personal things, like, you know, things related to my life or belief systems and things like that. So I do explore those things. The thing about the Cool Colas brand is that you're not just speaking to somebody who's talking about pro-blackness alone and that's it. That's not my whole personality. That's just one belief that I have. You're getting insight from a guy who is sharing his life with you. You're getting into my experiences, not just with the way that I think, but my passions and the things that I want to create. Because I told y'all before, I'm an artist, I'm a writer, I'm somebody who wants to create a lot of things from an entertainment standpoint, and that is still the plan. But I now have a purpose and a mission and a goal, and I let those things drive me. So my point is that if you play your cards right, you can literally make a brand out of anything. So I can still be pro-black and stay true to the things that I believe, but also put out my content, put out my books and things like that. But it just takes a little strategy, and you can't give up on yourself if you really, really believe in this type of stuff. I also can understand rebranding, again, to step away to actually do that constructive thing that you're doing. You know, one of the things I talked about is how, like, you know, I'm making content for YouTube and things like that, but I don't really make a whole lot of new content for Instagram, because eventually I'm going to start talking more about my books, my comics, and things like that, because these are things that I want to fund and create. Because again, my whole goal is to change the scope of media, and that means creating authentic black characters, black stories, and things like that that really aren't out there and that are controlled, owned, and maneuvered by myself. So again, I don't see a problem with rebranding in some ways if it's going to be something that's constructive and it's also genuine. I definitely don't see a problem with it. Now let's go ahead and look at the flip side of all this. So let's say that this is a genuine rebranding. This is just a genuine change of ideals and belief systems. If this is genuine, then this is nothing more than a case of the "we told you so's." And let me explain what I mean by that. I'm going to give you an example, actually, before I go into a deeper explanation. I have this friend, and he knows who he is, and if he's watching this video, he knows what I'm saying is true. It is what it is. I ain't gonna say his name, but he knows it's true. And since we were kids, I try to put him on game about something, and a lot of times, not every time, but a lot of times he would get really defensive, or he would pull out the "that's not my experience" talking point, which is silly because it's like, no, we don't have a difference in experience. We have different levels of experience and how we experienced it. And what I mean by different levels of experience is I've maybe experienced this thing longer than you have, much longer. And as a result, I'm putting you on game about what my experience is, not trying to necessarily tell you have to think like me, but at least trying to give you something to think about and a warning. Or he would just straight up argue against me and say that he just totally doesn't agree, and he would present millions of points as to why he doesn't really agree with what I'm saying. But then later, he'll find out that what I was saying came to be true, it came to fruition, or what I was putting him on game about was something that actually happened, and it's something that's public. And he would never acknowledge that I was right. Now, he may move into this sphere where he starts thinking in the same way that I was thinking, but he would never come to me and say, "Hey, yo, bro, you was right about this." At best, even if I would call him out, he would say, "Well, I's got to find out for myself." He would do one of them. That's why now, even today, I just don't be warning people about stuff. I'll just let you find out on your own. And then, I'll just be like, oh, that's interesting that you just found that out, because, niggas are hard-headed and stubborn when you try to tell them shit. But, it's all love. I ain't trying to be passive aggressive. I'm just giving y'all an example of where this shows up quite a bit. My point in saying all that is that would be how Amanda Seales is looking if she was actually being genuine. It's like we told your ass and we told the rest of the damn world too what the business was. We told you about reparations. We told you about delineation. We told you about this black on black crime thing being some bullshit. We told you about white supremacy or systemic white supremacy. We told you the Democrats weren't good and the Republicans weren't good. We said all this shit. But the point that I'm making is that if it's really genuine and it's really just a change in thought process, this is exactly what Amanda Seales is currently doing. But she's doing it on a much bigger scale. So here's the criteria that we have to implement when it comes to judging rebrands. Number one, do they acknowledge that they were wrong before? Number two, do they credit pro-blacks and the grassroots voices when they are dismissed? Number three, do they pretend that they came up with these ideals all along and they had no type of influence? These are the things that we have to ask. And to be honest, Amanda Seales can call herself a radical or whatever all she wants, but until she owns the idea that she has dismissed us heavy in the past, and what I mean by us is a lot of us pro-blacks and those who are in new black media, and she also shows consistency, we're going to have to call this a rebrand that isn't genuine. And rebrands don't just earn trust just because you're trying to do something different that seems constructive. You have to prove it. You have to earn our trust. And if I'm being honest with y'all, I don't trust her. I simply don't trust her. I'm just being honest. And let me also be clear as well too. Amanda Seales didn't just body a bunch of black conservatives who were geniuses. She bodied a bunch of idiots and sambos who didn't even take time to pick up a book and read and understand history and knowledge on race issues. So my point in saying all this is she had soft targets, number one, and she also, two, was regurgitating a lot of talking points that have been used in new black media. What I would have liked to have seen, me personally, is a bunch of black conservatives that were mixed between some of the Sambos and then also too some pro-black conservatives who had certain talking points. And then I would love to see them on a panel against somebody like Tariq Nasheed, Jason Black, Professor Black Truth, and even Umar. I think Umar would be interesting too. I ain't gonna lie. I think it would be kind of different to see Umar. Or anybody else who, again, has a vast track record of standing on business when it comes to any of the topics that I named earlier, whether it's reparations, whether it's racism, whether it's delineation, or whether it's just debunking a bunch of stupid talking points on how there's black on black crime when this is a myth. But y'all tell me what you think about it. What do you think about the video that Amanda Seals did where she debated the conservatives? What do you think about what I'm saying about the rebrand? Let me know your comments below and what you think and how you envision all of this going. Do you think this rebrand is genuine, or do you think that she's just trying something new because she failed at what she was doing before? All right, y'all. Hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you enjoyed what I had to say. I definitely will have more to come in the future, so make sure you stay tuned. In the meantime, I would love it if you like this video, subscribe, share, and also hit the bell icon so you get notifications for whenever I come out with new content on this channel. And then when you're finished, leave me a comment below. That way I can get back to whatever it is that you had to say about this topic. Other than that, I will talk to y'all later. Peace out, y'all.